Good morning, friends. I am Captain Dr. D.K. Ramawat, working as a non-invasive cardiologist at Ramawat Heart and General Medicine Hospital, Badmer, Rajasthan, India. Today, we are going to take part 3rd of STEMI, ST elevation myocardial infarction. We have taken part 1 and part 2 previously. And now this is part 3rd, which is much more interesting. I hope you like it. In part 2nd, we have finished up to point 10th. That was the routine in hospital management of patient with STEMI, with other than reperfusion therapy. We have finished. Now we are taking the 11th point, which is in the part 3rd, that is management of complications of the STEMI. So you see, the management of STEMI in Indian perspective, the management of complication of STEMI, the 11th point. Here you will see there are 3 main complications. Number 1, ventricular septal rupture, 2nd, papillary muscle rupture, and 3rd, free wall rupture of the left ventricle. Now regarding ventricular septal defect, you can find out by the echocardiography to ascertain the shunts left to right or right to left, and LV angiography will determine nature of the septal defect without and with number of the holes. And also, if there is papillary muscle rupture, echocardiography like transthoracic echo and can be done to see the papillary muscle rupture, and which is confirmed by transesophageal echo, and it will show you the flail swinging mitral wall with severe mitral regurgitation, and guide specific therapy will be done. Then pre-wall rupture of LV. Here what happens? There will be no blood pressure, so electromechanical dissociation will be seen by ECG. Echocardiography may show the rupture as well as the massive pericardial effusion. Massive means more than 5 mm of the accumulation of the blood. So if you go for electromechanical dissociation, you will see either ventricular fibrillation like this, or VT like this, or asystole like this. Here you see, because of diffuse myocardial ischemia in the rupture, there is no myocardial contraction. Heart will not contract. The simultaneous ECG and arterial pressure testing can reveal a variety of organized ECG rhythm, for example, sinus rhythm, all grade of heart block, idioventricular rhythm, and ventricular fibrillation, and VT and asystole. And this all is seen on ECG without an arterial pressure. They are corrected by restoration of myocardial reperfusion. If palpable pulse generated with QRS complexes usually respond well to pharmacologic intervention or pacing. In this case, what we have to do, immediately resume CPR for 2 minutes, then establish vascular access, and then administer epinephrine 3 to 5 minutes. Every 3 to 5 minutes you have to administer epinephrine. Consider advanced airway and tidal CO2 monitoring. In this case, when there is mechanical complication, you will find left ventricular failure, and left ventricular failure is a dysfunction of cardiac muscles due to ischemia number 1, myocardial stenting, that is known as stent myocardium, and myocardial hypertension, that is known as hibernating myocardium. So you know what is myocardial stenting. Implies prolonged post-ischemic dysfunction after reperfusion. That is persistent wall muscle abnormality even after reperfusion, means post-perfusion for hours to days. Remember, wall muscle abnormality for hours to days. 61% of the stunned segment improve at 3 months and 9% at 14 months by inotrophs and post-extrasystolic potentiation, PESP, which is a paired pacing. Then myocardial hibernation implies chronic persistent ischemia of months to years. There it was for hours to days, but here it is a persistent ischemia of months to years. That is, ischemic cells remain viable, but contraction is chronically depressed. With dramatic improvement will occur after nitrates, inotropes, and post extrasystolic potentiation PESP, and by PTCA and by CABG. Then also LV function may occur due to cell death. Cells of the myocardium is dead, and then the mechanical complications like papillary muscle rupture causing mitral regurgitation, ventricular septal rupture, and free wall rupture. They all will cause LV, left ventricle failure. Bedside echo helps in quantifying LV function and identifying mechanical complications. Heart failure warrants urgent coronary angiography and revascularization. Oxygen administered and blood gases monitored. Non-invasive CPAP, BiPAP, and invasive endotracheal intubation with ventilator support may be required. IV diuretics and morphine reduce pulmonary congestion and allay anxiety. IV nitroglycerin used in all patients to reduce venous congestion and bring the mean arterial blood pressure 70 mm of the mercury. Remember, it is mean arterial pressure, not systolic or diastolic. Then IV sodium nitroprusside can be added. Now the inotropes which we will use in case of left ventricular failure. Number one, the best is levosimendan inotropes, shown some benefit in acute heart failure following acute coronary syndrome. Here dosage will be patient with a stable, mainly New York Heart Association class 3rd heart failure of ischemic origin treated with a bolus of 3 to 36 microgram per kg in 10 minutes, followed by a 24-hour IV infusion of 0.05 to 0.6 microgram per kg per minute. LV assist device placement may be necessary to aid vasodilators. ACE inhibitors improve LV performance and decrease oxygen consumption by reducing afterload. Mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists like eplerenone and spironolactone can be given with left ventricular ejection fraction less than 40% in diabetes, in clinical signs of the heart failure. And here in these three cases, the serum potassium and GFR monitoring is essential. Beta blockers should be used with caution. Cardiogenic shock 50% exists at presentation and 85% present during hospitalization. Inotropic and vasopressors are used to improve the mean arterial pressure. Intra-aortic balloon pump in cardiogenic shock is conflicting. Intra-aortic balloon pump can help to aid or up-titrate vasodilator therapy. Then, in this case, left ventricular failure, you can use dopamine. Dopamine improves cardiac hemodynamics, but no survival benefit. Remember, can improve cardiac hemodynamics, but no survival benefit. If you give low dose, it will increase urine output. 1 to 5 microgram per kg per minute IV to increase urine output and increase kidney blood flow. If you give intermediate dose, it will increase cardiac output and cardiac contractility. 5 to 15 microgram per kg per minute IV to increase kidney blood flow, cardiac output and cardiac contractility and heart rate. Then the high dose 20 to 50 microgram per kg per minute IV to increase blood pressure and stimulate vasoconstriction, may increase infusion by 1 to 4 microgram per kg per minute at 10 to 30 minutes interval, but until desired response, that is adequate blood pressure, is achieved, up to that time you can use this continuously. Dobutamine improve cardiac hemodynamics but no survival benefit like dopamine. The initial dose for adult is based on the indication and severity of heart failure. 0.5 microgram per kg per minute to 1 microgram per kg per minute, followed by 2 to 20 microgram per kg per minute. Maximum dose can be given up to 40 microgram per kg per minute. Then the norepinephrine a direct vasoconstriction used in patients who remain hypotensive. Initial dose will be 8 to 12 microgram per minute continuous IV infusion, and maintenance dose will be 2 to 4 microgram per minute IV infusion, and duration of therapy will be continuous infusion until adequate blood pressure and tissue perfusion are maintained without therapy. Even if we discontinue the noradrenaline, the tissue perfusion should be maintained. Maintain a low blood pressure, means 80 to 100 millimeter of mercury systolic, which is sufficient to maintain the circulation to vital organs. Then temporary mechanical support with left ventricular assist devices like impeller device and ESMO like extracorporeal membrane oxygenation used. These may allow time for recovery of stunned and hibernating myocardium. 40% of inferior MI are associated with right ventricular MI with right ventricular dysfunction. Now, if you go to right ventricular MI or failure, which is identified clinically by what? Number 1, hypotension, jugular venous distension, clear lungs, ST elevation in right-sided chest leads by ECG, right ventricular dysfunction by echo identified and quantified. A severe right ventricular failure present with what? Low cardiac output, oliguria, altered mental stage. By these 3 points, you can find out the right ventricular failure. Now, LV failure can coexist, complicating fluid management. Maintain RV preload by fluid therapy, targeting central venous pressure, 50 millimeter of the mercury, and reduction of right ventricular afterload. Remember, preload reducing drug like nitrates and diuretics should be avoided. Restoration of AV synchrony with dual chamber temporary pacing or cardioversion for atrial fibrillation should be done when needed. Longer AV delays, atrioventricular delays around 200 milliseconds and heart rate about 80 to 90 per minute give the best hemodynamics. Right ventricular dysfunction may need positive inotropes like dobutamine, which help to improve RV contractility and vasodilatation. The initial dose for adult is based on the indication and severity of the heart failure. 0.5 microgram per kg per minute to 1 microgram per kg per minute, followed by 2 to 20 microgram per kg per minute used. Maximum dose of the dobutamine is 40 microgram per kg per minute. Now, in RV dysfunction, reperfusion of RV branches improves right ventricular function and lowers 30 days mortality rates. Then right ventricular assist devices is indicated in refractory cardiogenic shock. Then, now that 11th point, the complications of the mechanical complications have ended, and now we are going the first complication, that is 12th point, acute mitral regurgitation due to papillary muscle dysfunction. Acute mitral regurgitation due to papillary muscle dysfunction. Papillary muscle rupture, PMR, occurs in about 1% of the patient with STEMI. Papillary muscle rupture contribute 7% of cardiogenic shock and 5% mortality following STEMI. Posterior medial papillary muscle is more commonly involved due to its single blood supply from RCA or circumflex artery. Vasodilators and inodilators reduce the afterload and regurgitant fraction and improve forward stroke volume. Sodium nitroprusside, nitroglycerin, morphine, inotropes, ACE inhibitors and diuretics play a crucial role in pharmacotherapy. Intra-aortic balloon pump by decreasing afterload decreases MR and increases forward flow. Mechanical support with impeller device and ESMO extracorporeal membrane oxygenation and ventricular assist devices having used with benefit in tiding over the acute crisis of cardiogenic shock. Here you will see continuity of the mitral apparatus and the left ventricular myocardium. You see, this is your anterolateral papillary muscle with one body and one head. Here blood supply is from both LAD and circumflex. It is supplied by two branches, LAD and circumflex. Here this is your posterior medial papillary muscle. It has got two head and two bodies, and its blood supply is from single RCA and or from circumflex. It is supplied either by single RCA or by single circumflex. So it is more likely to rupture. You must never forget why the posterior medial papillary muscle is ruptured, because it has got single blood supply, and this anterolateral papillary muscle is not ruptured because it has got dual blood supply. Now, medical therapy alone for acute mitral regurgitation with STEMI is dismal, disgraceful, having poor prognosis. In hospital, mortality is about 72 to 80%. Now, the coronary angiography is necessary for coronary revascularization along with mitral valve surgery, which is associated with improved short-term and long-term outcomes. Mitral valve replacement required if evidence of ischemic injury or papillary muscle necrosis is there. Then percutaneous mitral valve repair using MitraClip is used. MitraClip is medical device used to treat severe MR that does not require open heart surgery and involves suturing together anterior and posterior mitral valve leaflets, used in salvaging patient with severe MR caused by papillary muscle rupture. Remember, here you don't open the thorax, but you are doing by a percutaneous route. Rupture of free wall occurs in 0.5 to 2% of STEMI patient, which are of the following 5 types. First rupture is large rupture, present as pulseless electrical activity, PEA, and sudden cardiac death. Now you see, this is pulseless electrical activity. In these 3 cases, you won't feel the pulse. What are those conditions? Ventricular fibrillation number 1, ventricular tachycardia number 2, and asystole number 3. These all are not shockable. Don't give shock. And here, this is also called pulseless electrical activity or electromechanical devices. Electromechanical device. Here, you have to use immediate CPR, establish vascular access, administer epinephrine every 3 to 5 minutes, and consider advanced airway and tidal suit monitoring. Here, don't give shock. These are non-shockable. Then, if we go the second rupture, which is subacute and small ruptures present with pericarditis with rub or tamponade, low cardiac output state, hypertension, transthoracic shows pericardial effusion with or without cardiac tamponade. CT angiography or MRI is useful in determining the extent of free valve rupture. Then the third rupture is the complete rupture. If unoperated, if you don't operate complete rupture, the mortality is 100%. Surgery is the only treatment. Role of medical therapy is to maintain the BP, which includes what? Fluids, inotropic support, vasopressor, intra-aortic balloon pump, etc. Then pericardiocentesis is used for relief of tamponade to save the life. Then direct suture of the myocardium over the infarct zone using what? There are two methods how we can suture. Number 1, Teflon felt strip. Second is simple patch and glue technique. Now what is Teflon felt strip? 2 Teflon strips, 5 mm and 12 mm, wide, placed inside and outside the ruptured free wall, and free wall is sandwiched between felt strips by using 4 polypropylene sutures. Sutures are done. You are making a sandwich of 5 mm and 12 mm wide, placed inside and outside of the ruptured free, and they are sutured. Second method is simple patch and glue technique. Glue is a hard gelatin made by boiling bones and hides. Hides are animal skins. So glue is hard gelatin made by boiling bones and animal skin, used in solution as an adhesive. Without coronary revascularization is associated with better outcome. Perioperative mortality is 33 to 55%. Then the fourth rupture is incomplete rupture of LV, which produces pseudoaneurysm. This contains what? Organizing thrombus and pericardium, which forms the outer wall. It is continued by organizing thrombus and pericardium, which form the outer wall. It may undergo progressive enlargement. 2D echo shows an aneurysmal bulge which communicates with the body of LV through a narrow neck. Ventricular aneurysm formation occur in 5 to 38% in STEMI. It occurs 5 times more frequent with anterior MI. Never forget. Then CT angiography and MRI identify what? The location and extent to health plan surgical therapy. Then clots inside the pseudoaneurysm, that is mural thrombus. Mural thrombus is where inside the aneurysm can embolize. So anticoagulation given for mural thrombus. Now the fifth and the last rupture is spontaneous rupture. Occurs in 1/3 of the patient. Surgical intervention with primary repair or patch closure done to prevent sudden cardiac death. If possible, surgery delayed for 15 to 30 days so that developed myocardial fibrosis facilitate the surgery. Then if we take the third rupture, first was the papillary muscle rupture, second was the free wall rupture of the ventricle, third rupture is the ventricular septal rupture, develop in 1 to 2% of STEMI with early thrombolysis and primary angioplasty. Incidence is less than 0.5%. Anterior MI causes anterior ventricular septal rupture, while inferior MI causes a basal posterior ventricular septal rupture. Color Doppler echo with new onset harsh hollow systolic pericardial murmur clinchage confirms the diagnosis. Transthoracic echo offer additional information. Now rupture could be large, small and serpiginous, means ulcerated, which can become larger over time. Now surgical correction is the cornerstone of therapy. Surgical correction is the cornerstone of therapy. Motility with ventricular septal disease treated medically. Motility with ventricular disease treated medically is 24% and at 72 hours and 75% at 3 weeks. With cardiogenic shock and multi-organ failure, surgical mortality is increased. Right ventricular dysfunction and right ventricular failure carry a poor prognosis. Concomitant CABG, coronary artery bypass graft, recommended for patients undergoing surgical repair of ventricular septal rupture. Percutaneous device closure of peri-infarct ventricular ruptures have good results, especially in smaller defect if it is less than 10 mm in size. Device closure in large defect can be a bridge to definitive surgery by reducing left to right shunt and improving the hemodynamics. Then the ventricular aneurysm formation occurs in 5 to 38% in STEMI, occurs 5 times more frequent with anti-MI. Now refractory heart failure, refractory ventricular arrhythmia and recurrent thromboembolism in patient with an aneurysm is an indication of surgical repair like door procedure. Never forget the door procedure surgical repair. Door procedure is a medical technique used as a part of heart surgery. It is also known as endoventricular circular patch plasty, EVCPP, endoventricular circular patch plasty. Door procedure performed along CABG, which reduces LV diastolic volume and improve ejection fraction. Now, various kinds of bradyarrhythmias are seen in these cases who are having ruptures and complicate the STEMI. Tachyarrhythmias can be supraventricular or ventricular, and it is due to what? Excessive sympathetic stimulation, number one. Atrial stretch due to right ventricular or left ventricular pressure or volume overload. Can be due to pericarditis, atrial infarction, hypoxia, electrolyte abnormalities, COPD and ischemia. Atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation occurs in 8 to 22%. New onset atrial fibrillation is associated with cardiogenic shock, stroke and mortality within 90 days. Atrial fibrillation treated by IV beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, IV digoxin used in left ventricular dysfunction or failure. Direct electrical cardioversion needed in unstable patients with late presentation in atrial fibrillation. Transesophageal echocardiography done to rule out left atrial clot before cardioverting with 50 joules synchronized DC shock. IV amiodarone is used in atrial fibrillation, may be used if recurrent atrial fibrillation or flutter seen. Sinus tachycardia does not need a specific therapy. APDs, atrial premature depolarization, should not be treated. Then electrolyte imbalance corrected. All arrhythmias require electrolyte imbalance correction. Ventricular arrhythmia, for example VT, which is hemodynamically stable and non-sustained, and accelerated idioventricular rhythm after reperfusion, does not cause sudden cardiac death. It does not cause and do not require specific therapy. Beta blocker should be started early as it reduces ventricular arrhythmia. Very early VT during primary PCI having a twofold increase in mortality compared to those without VT. VT after primary PCI within 48 hours of STEMI had a 5-fold increase in mortality. Polymorphic VT occurs in 0.3% of STEMI associated with ischemia or reperfusion. Sustained monomorphic VT is associated with permanent arrhythmic substrate. Scar-related re-entry represent the most common arrhythmia substrate in patients with recurrent episodes of sustained VT. Permanent arrhythmic substrate and is associated with higher in-hospital mortality and long-term recurrence. Primary ventricular fibrillation occurring within 48 hours, not associated with recurrent ischemia or heart failure. Sustained monomorphic VT and VF associated with higher in-hospital mortality, but only sustained monomorphic VT associated with higher post-discharge 1-year mortality. The electrical cardioversion must be given for VF and pulseless VT. This is the VF, this is pulseless VT. And simultaneously, ongoing ischemia, residual ischemia, and electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium should be corrected, and acid-base abnormalities corrected. All these things, if you correct and if you cardiovert, then only VF and pulseless VT will be improved, otherwise no. Then IV amiodarone given who have VT with normal BP. Dosage 5 mg per kg dissolved in 5% 250 ml glucose over a period of 20 minutes to 2 hours, followed by repeat infusion 15 mg per kg up to 1200 mg dissolved in 5% 500 ml glucose per 24 hours. In extreme emergency, 150 to 300 mg in 10 to 20 ml 5% glucose over a minimum of 3 minutes can be given. This should not be repeated for at least 15 minutes. As soon as adequate response obtained, oral therapy initiated. As usual, loading dose 200 mg TDS and gradually phased out. Then, regarding VT and VF occurring beyond 48 hours in absence of reversible ischemia or reinfarction or metabolic abnormalities, which is an indication for ICD implantation before discharge. You must implant ICD if these things are present. If VF and VT and VF are occurring after 48 hours, in absence of this. Radiofrequency catheter ablation. Radiofrequency catheter ablation offered in following conditions. If recurrent symptomatic sustained monomorphic VT despite medical therapy. If incessant VT is defined as continuous sustained VT during several hours which recurs promptly despite repeated intervention for termination. And VT storm is considered as equal to or more than 3 separate episodes of sustained VT within 24 hours, each requiring termination by an intervention, not due to reversible cause. Then bundle branch reentrant VT. Bundle branch reentrant VT is a uncommon form of VT incorporating both bundle branch into the reentry circuit. Then interfascicular VT. Interfascicular VT is a type of bundle branch VT, right bundle branch morphology and left or right axis deviation. Then recurrent refractory sustained polymorphic VT. Then ventricular fibrillation with a suspected trigger like partially injured Purkinje fibers. Then sinus bradycardia can occur. Sinus bradycardia is a common in inferior and posterior MI due to reflex cholinergic stimulation of vagus nerve. Pathologic bradycardia seen in, for example, SA node pacemaker problem or conduction pathway problem and metabolic problem like low thyroid hormones. No specific treatment needed if no hypotension or bradycardia triggered VPDs, ventricular premature depolarizations. Now, atropine used to raise the target heart rate. In cases of bradycardia, atropine used to raise the target heart rate around 60 beats per minute. For first degree AV block, no specific treatment required, but continuous monitoring is important because it can progress to higher degree of blocks. Then Mobitz type first, Vancomycin second degree AV block. is due to AV nodal ischemia. No specific treatment needed. Atropine used if needed. Doses of atropine are 0.5 mg IV every 3 to 5 minutes to a maximum total dose of 3 mg. Then Mopitz times second degree of AV block is due to infraeschaeal ischemia, which may progress to complete heart block, hence need temporary pacing. Then complete AV block in inferior infarctions due to supraeschaeal or infraeschaeals. It has a stable narrow QRS escape rhythm with rates exceeding 40 beats per minute in 70% of cases, and response to atropine, particularly if develops in the first 6 hours. Pacing is needed with lower escape rates, hypotension, pump failure, VPDs, and if complete AV block develops later in the course of STEMI. Complete AV block in anterior infarction is due to extensive septal necrosis involving the bundle branches and associated with high mortality. It is preceded by second degree AV block. Escape rhythm is unstable with wide QRS complexes in rate less than 40 beats per minute. Ventricular asystole may occur suddenly. Pacing in anterior MI has not shown survival benefits. Then pacing protects what? Against asystole, against transient hypotension, which can extend the infarction and can precipitate malignant ventricular arrhythmias. Indications for permanent pacing after STEMI. Number 1, symptomatic persistent second or third degree AV block. Second, persistent infraeschaeal third degree AV block. Third, persistent second degree AV block in the His-Purkinje system with alternative bundle branch block. Fourth, transient advanced second or third degree infranodal AV block and associated bundle branch block. Then the 13th point, big point in part 3rd, is ischemic complications of the STEMI. Earlier we have taken the mechanical complications, but here what are the ischemic complications of the STEMI? First is recurrent chest pain may be due to reocclusion of recanalized vessel, whether thrombotic or mechanical. Number 2, new ischemia at non-infarct related artery. Third, extension of occlusion to neighboring vessels or side branches. The post-infarction discomfort due to ischemia has come down to 5% due to, number 1, aggressive approach of recanalization, for example by primary PCI or pharmacoinvasive PCI, and number 2, by usage of antithrombin, and number 3, by usage of antiplatelet drugs. Then inflammatory complications may develop, and inflammatory complications are pericarditis number 1 and pericardial effusion number 2. And now the pericarditis rarely progress to tamponade except in rupture of free wall and generally resolve slowly over a period of time. Anticoagulation is stopped on detection of effusion and can be continued if strongly indicated. For treatment of the pericarditis, aspirin in doses of 650 mg 4 hourly. Then regarding NSAID and steroid avoided because they interfere with scar formation. Now the 4th point in ischemic complication of STEMI, the Dressler syndrome, the post-myocardial infarction syndrome. It is delayed pericarditis occurring 1 to 8 weeks after infarction and is of unknown etiology, probably autoimmune. Signs and symptoms are malaise, fever, leukocytosis, elevated ESR. Treatment respond well to aspirin 625 mg 4 hourly. NSAID are useful. Recurrent cases need colchicine and steroids can be used if symptoms are severe. Then the deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. Causes who need prolonged bed rest and hospitalization. Deep vein thrombus from lower extremities is a source of pulmonary embolism. Then thrombus formation over the area of right ventricular dysfunction is also a source of pulmonary embolism. Then regarding treatment, early mobilization and anticoagulations are given. Then deep vein thrombosis will dissolve and no pulmonary embolism will occur. Then the mural thrombus occurs in 5 to 20% patients, more common with large infarct, and out of this 10% embolize, resulting in stroke, renal infarcts, and mesenteric ischemia and peripheral limb ischemia. If mural thrombus detected in first 2 to 3 days, it has got worse prognosis. Now treatment for mural thrombus will be anticoagulation with IV unfractured heparin started in the absence of bleeding to maintain APTT, activated partial thromboplast in time, in therapeutic range of 1.5 to 2.5 times of the control, that is around 60 to 80 seconds. Unfractured heparin followed by tablet warfarin for 3 to 6 months to reach a target INR of 2 to 3. Now the bleeding, it is associated with increased risk of mortality with hazard ratio ranging from 1.6% for minor bleeding and 10 to 6% for major bleeding. Consideration should be given for, in bleeding cases, consideration should be given for age, sex, body weight, renal and liver functions while planning anticoagulant, antiplatelet and thrombolytic therapy drugs. While planning PCI, due attention should be given to sheath size, catheter size, sheath removal and activated clotting time to monitor high dose of IV unfractured heparin. It is done in cath lab. In cath lab, we give attention to sheath size, catheter size, sheath removal and SCT. Radial access is associated with reduction in bleeding complications. Intracranial hemorrhage warrants stopping all anticoagulants and antiplatelet drugs. Neuroimaging and neurosurgical consultation should be sought. Suspected retroperitoneal bleeds warrants prompt CT imaging of abdomen and pelvis. Now treatment, often conservative management should suffice. Then vascular intervention can be done sometimes. Surgical management may be needed. Gastrointestinal bleed warrants urgent endoscopic procedure. Protamine can be tried. Then fresh frozen plasma should be given. Then prothrombin complex concentrate, PCC, also known as factor 9th complex, is a medication made up of blood clotting factor 2nd, 9th and 10th. Some version also contain factor 7th. It is used to treat and prevent bleeding. Then activated factor 7th, a protein produced in the liver that plays an important role in helping your blood to clot. Lastly, the platelet infusion can be used as necessary. It is important to note no particular therapy is associated improved survival in intracranial hemorrhage. Blood transfusion is associated with increased morbidity and mortality. If hemoglobin level drops to less than 8 gram, then transfusion can be given. Then mental depression. 65% of patients develop depression. 15 to 25% have major depression and 30 to 60% have depression symptoms beyond 1 month of MI. Now treatment for depression in mild cases, counseling and behavioral therapy. In severe, persistent or recurrent depression, and if they have family history of depression and patient is not cooperating with psychotherapists, then AHA advisory. AHA advisory states selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor antidepressants are given like sertraline and citalopram, which are very safe. Then we are reaching to the 14th point of the third part of STEMI. This is rehabilitation, restoring normal life and health after STEMI. Structured rehabilitation program, modular programming which is more efficient and easier to understand and modify, plays a very important role. Stop smoking and avoid passive smoking. Eat a healthy diet, a Mediterranean style diet. What is that? Brown bread and rice, fresh fruits and vegetables, fish and lean meat, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated mustard oil and rice bran oil. Avoid red meat, cheese, butter, refined carbohydrates and deep fried foods. They should be avoided. Then correct the 9 attributable risk factors in India, which is what? These are increased ratio of apolipoprotein B100 and apolipoprotein A1 should be corrected. Current and former smoking stopped. Hypertension corrected. Diabetes corrected. Increased high waist hip ratio corrected. Psychosocial factors like stress and depression treated. Decreased moderate or high intensity exercise should be corrected. Alcohol consumption, if it is more than once a week, should be corrected. And if there is decreased consumption of fruits and vegetables, should be corrected. These 9 factors are the risk factors and they should be corrected. Then the key for dietary recommendations. The key for dietary recommendations. Number 1, eat plenty of soluble fibers with non-refined cereals. They increase fullness and decrease calorie absorption. Avoid processed foods that contain trans fats like hydrogenated oil and meat, and excess of saturated fat. They are linked to insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is what? Obesity, hypertriglyceridemia, low HDL, hyperglycemia and hypertension. Don't drink too much alcohol. Eat a high protein diet. It increases release of fullness hormone PYY, which decreases appetite and promote fullness. Don't eat a lot of sugary foods like simple carbohydrates, for example sugar, direct sugar. It should be replaced by natural complex sugar like whole grain food containing fibers, vitamins and minerals which take longer time to digest. Cut back on carbohydrate, especially refined carb like maida. Replace some of your cooking fats with coconut oil, which are medium chain fats in coconut oil may boost metabolism and decrease the amount of fat. And balanced oil like mustard oil recommended. Avoid sugar sweetened beverages. Track your food intake and exercise. Keep track of what you are eating by keeping a food diary. Eat fatty fish every week because omega-3 fatty acids decrease visceral fats. Stop drinking fruit juices and increase intake of plenty of vegetables and fruits which contain fibers. Add apple cider vinegar to your diet. It contains acetic acid which reduces fat storage. Eat probiotic foods or take a probiotic supplement. Probiotics are bacteria which may have promote weight loss. Try intermittent fasting and calorie intake limitations to optimize body weight by autophagy. Most effective way to lose weight. Autophagy defines cleaning out damaged cells in order to regenerate newer and healthier cells, especially in malignancy. Drink green tea. It contains caffeine and antioxidants, epigallocatechin 3, gallate, EGCG, both boost metabolism and reduce weight. Avoid excess sodium salt and increase enhancement of potassium enriched food, which is considered to counter the effect of sodium salt, and it lowers the BP also. Now, the therapies that have been found to be not useful in STEMI and hence are not recommended, they include estrogen therapy, vitamin B and C and beta carotene, treatment of elevated homocysteine with folate or vitamin B and vitamin B12, the garlic lasun, coenzyme Q10, selenium or chromium, and lastly acupuncture. These all therapies are not recommended because they are not useful in STEMI. A notion that alcohol is good for heart, it is never recommended to take alcohol to keep heart healthy. It is never recommended to take alcohol to keep heart healthy. However, people who drink alcohol may continue to do so. Alcohol consumption should be discouraged with LV dysfunction, and binge alcohol, excessive indulgence, drinking should be prohibited. Regular aerobic physical activity of 20 to 30 minutes a day or at least 5 days in a week is good for STEMI, provided there is no significant heart failure. Exercise should make the person mildly breathless. Unaccustomed to exercise before the MI taken up in a supervised exercise program in a gradually increasing fashion. If exercise capacity is more than 5 minutes without symptoms, patient can return to routine physical activity. If capacity is not more than 5 minutes, then daily walking is encouraged soon after discharge. Then aerobic exercise can be started by 2 weeks. Mild resistance training to move your limbs against resistance is started by 4 weeks. Then for unsupervised exercise, the target should be 60 to 75% of maximum predicted heart rate. Then fifth point, with a trainer supervising exercise, the target should be 70 to 85% of maximum predicted heart rate. Now, practice of yoga has limited scientific evidence, so I can't tell you how much it can benefit, but it is done and may be useful, we don't know. Total calorie intake adjusted to attain the ideal body weight, which is a BMI of 20 to 25 per kg per meter square, and the waist circumference of 90 centimeter per man and 80 centimeter per woman. Of course, physical activity is as important as diet. For secondary prevention of STEMI, aspirin, a second antiplatelet drug, P2Y12 like clopidogrel, prasugrel, ticagrelor, and statin, beta blocker, and ACE inhibitor, ARB, if ACE inhibitor contraindicated or not tolerated, are proven benefit for secondary prevention after STEMI. Aspirin, a daily dose of 75 mg continued indefinitely. In case of aspirin intolerance or allergy, clopidogrel 10 mg per day is recommended. In high-risk patients with peptic ulcer, proton pump inhibitor recommended. The second antiplatelet agent continued for at least 1 year of STEMI. The doses are 75 mg clopidogrel per day, 10 mg daily prasugrel per day, 90 mg twice daily ticagrelor. After stent implantation, minimum duration of DAPT is 12 months. In low bleeding risk patient, extended beyond 12 months. Remember, in low bleeding risk patient, extended beyond 12 months. In patient with oral anticoagulant or with high bleeding risk, duration is shorter for 6 months. Prasugrel contraindicated with high bleeding risk patient than with a history of stroke or transient ischemic attacks. Patient who received thrombolytic therapy but no stent, clopidogrel is recommended ideally for 12 months or more. ACE inhibitor started as soon as patient hemodynamically stable. Maximum benefits of ACE inhibitor are with anterior MI, MI with LVF, or MI with left ventricular ejection fraction below 45%, and diabetes. ACE inhibitors continued indefinitely. ACE inhibitors started at low dose and rapidly escalated with a target dose within 4 to 6 weeks. Serum potassium and glomerular filtration rate checked at baseline and every 7 to 14 days during the drug titration period. Once patient is stable, an annual checkup is sufficient. BP monitoring with special attention for postural hypertension required. If hyperkalemia, prevent by thiazide or loop diuretics. Remember, combination of ACE inhibitor, ARB, and ARB not recommended. Beta blockers. Every patient with STEMI should be started on beta blocker unless contraindicated as soon as patient is hemodynamically stable after an MI, and to be continued for at least 3 years. In presence of left ventricular systolic dysfunction or left ventricular failure, beta blockers should be continued indefinitely. It helps in LVF and systolic dysfunction. Beta blockers are useful. The maximum tolerated approved dose should be targeted to be achieved. For metoprolol, it is maximum 200 mg. Statins. It is now universally accepted that all patients with cardiovascular disease require high intensity statins in the form of atorvastatin 40 to 80 mg per day or rosuvastatin 20 to 40 mg per day with an aim to reduce LDL cholesterol below 70 mg deciliter or by more than 50% from the baseline. Statins should be continued indefinitely in the same dose if tolerated. A baseline check of AST or ALT should be done, and after 6 to 12 weeks a second estimation should be done. If a rise of more than 3 times the upper limit of the normal is documented, then a primary cause for liver disease should be sought. In case of myopathy, serum CPK estimation recommended. If CPK values excess 10 times of normal, if CPK values excess 7 times of the normal, statin is withdrawn and contraindicate to be restarted. Then in high risk group patient, like old age, female sex, low body weight, CKD, hypothyroidism and vitamin D deficiency, watch for more closely for statin induced myopathy. Watch for statin induced myopathy. If LDL cholesterol not achieved below 70, then azitimib tablet 10 to 20 mg per day may be added to a low dose of statin. The new agent of PCSK9 inhibitor are yet to be approved in STEMI setting. Low HDL cholesterol is a perpetual and less risk factor for ischemic heart disease. And no pharmacological agents has been proved to increase HDL level till date. Lifestyle modifications with physical exercise, avoidance of obesity, and certain foods like nuts help in raising the HDL in a beneficial manner. High triglycerides level are proven risk associated for IHD. Once hyperglycemia, dysthyroidism, nephrotic syndrome, and other causes of high triglycerides excluded or treated, a value above 200 mg triglycerides may be treated with a fibrate. Fibrate, if used with statin, needs to be carefully monitored for renal function deterioration. If serum triglyceride level is above 500 milligram per deciliter, then treatment is necessary to prevent pancreatitis. Remember, if triglycerides above 500 mg, then pancreatitis develops. So prevent pancreatitis, and fibrate is the drug of choice here. In doses of 90 mg to 160 mg per day used. Then the calcium channel blockers in presence of hypertension, tachycardia, and angina. Non-diiodopiridines, verapamil, and diltiazem may be used if beta blockers are contraindicated, but they should not be used in presence of left ventricular dysfunction or failure. Now, potassium channel activator like nicorandil, a metabolic modulator like trimetazidine, an active piperazine derivative like ranolazine, heart rate lowering drug like ivabradine have no proven benefit in the post-STEMI. They are used, no doubt, but have no proven benefit in post-STEMI. Then lastly, the mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists like eplerenone and spironolactone should be considered with left ventricular dysfunction and failure. They should be initiated within 3 to 14 days of MI, preferably after ACE inhibitor therapy. Serum potassium and GFR glomerular filtration rate need to be monitored before and during treatment in the period when we use eplerenone and spironolactone. After complete recovery from an uncomplicated MI, sexual activity does not impose any extra risk for a second MI or MI related complications. An average period of 4 weeks should be given before resuming sex life. For treating male ED, phosphodiesterase inhibitor 5 may be considered only after 6 months. Then also phosphodiesterase inhibitor 5 should not be used with nitrates or nicorandil for chances of precipitous drop of blood pressure. Norms of driving vehicle and flying aircraft must be strictly followed. Now, the last but not the least, we are going at the 15th point, the conclusion. Structured cardiac rehabilitation and secondary prevention program reduce further cardiovascular events, risks, and improve active lifestyle. Improved survival has been found for all types of CAD patients independent of the intervention modality. Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind attention. We have finished the complete topic STEMI today. Now the last topic I will inform you afterwards. Thank you very much for your kind attention.